Chapter 4201. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about how he was feeling. Her pair of icy cold eyes looked at him. "Let go of me." She didn't move. But the pressure in her words made the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace's hands on her loosen up. But he still hugged her as his tone lowered. "You can't help them. If I let go, the matter of you losing your powers will be discovered by May." He pursed his lips tightly, and his eyes, which were as deep as a pond, were quiet and serene. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as her smile was cold. Their four eyes met. The young lady's emotionless voice rang coldly, "All these have nothing to do with you." His casual tone and his indifferent attitude, which was so alienated that it did not contain even the slightest bit of emotion. It had already pulled apart the distance between the two of them. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace could tell. The young lady no longer had any feelings towards him. Even those gratitude of him who had once saved her, had also vanished into thin air. The current her. She hated him. Because he was from Seclusion Palace. Her brothers were also captured by him. Various thoughts were surging in his heart. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace knew that from now onwards, he had already been listed in Yiqing Luo's enemy list. This knowledge made the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace's heart feel a dull piercing pain. "I just don't want you to get hurt." His voice was hoarse and filled with extreme bitterness. As though he had used up all his energy, he used his throat to spit out a voice. "My master doesn't trust me anymore. My original intention was to make use of the world group to bring you to my side. I had never thought of to hurt them, hurt you." He totally didn't know that the world group's 10 over people had already been secretly tampered with. Bai Mei could use the flute to torture them. That flute's aura was sinister and cold, revealing an extremely familiar aura. He totally didn't need to think too much to tell. That was his master's flute. Master had passed the flute to Bai Mei, letting Bai Mei control the world group's members. Whereas he totally didn't know about it. This was already very obvious. His feelings towards Yiqing Luo had already made his master no longer trust him. But if he had to do it all over again, his choice would not change. However, he was a little confused. Like her master, a cold-blooded, heartless demon who killed without batting an eye. Why, after knowing that his heart had already been shaken, why would she do something like this? But he still spared his life? He didn't have time to think about this question. The person in his arms had already pressed her palm against his chest. It was so weak, but he could feel that she was pushing him. He could still hear the girl's bone-chilling voice. "It doesn't matter if you want to or not. What's done is done. There's nothing to explain." The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was startled. Regardless of whether he wanted to or not, he had already done it. That was right, he didn't want to hurt her. But right now, wasn't everything that he was doing hurting her? From the very beginning, the relationship between him and Yiqing Luo was the opposite. No matter how much he liked her, he would eventually hurt her. There was no place to hide from this. He suddenly broke into laughter. His laughter was filled with bitterness and relief. The hands that encircled her body slowly loosened. He laughed and staggered backward. The smile on his face was sometimes maniacal, sometimes it was light ridicule. His entire temperament had undergone a huge change. It was like he suddenly understood something. Chapter 4202. A gloomy and evil aura surrounded the palace master of Gloomy Palace. He laughed in a low voice. The expression on his face was already an unfathomable one. Looking at Yiqing Luo's gaze, it was no longer that kind of suppressed intense feelings. It was dark and gloomy, and at a glance, one would only feel incomparably gloomy. He shuddered. His robes fluttered in the wind. In the blink of an eye, he wore the face of Qiao family's patriarch and was shrouded in a black robe. He put on the black robe that belonged to him once again. He had completely blended into the darkness. The man slowly let go of the girl. His body fell to the ground as if he had no bones. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man in front of her, whose aura had surged but was clearly estranged from her. There wasn't much fluctuation in his eyes. It was just a glance before he quickly retracted his gaze. Then, he turned to look at his brothers, who were in agony because of Bai Mei's flute. Only when he looked at them. Only when the young girl's eyes remained still did her emotions change. Her fingers stroked the azure dew bracelet, and she thought to herself, "Old man Song, can you save them?" She had lost her strength, and her body was still weak and powerless. It was impossible to save the World Group brothers. He could only rely on Old Man Song's secret help. "Girl Luo." Old Man Song's tone was a bit heavy. "I'm afraid this won't be easy." Yiqing Luo was stunned. "What's wrong?" "Old Man Song, if it was before, this old man could still help and use Xian Gui as a smokescreen to save the children of the World Group, but," he paused for a moment and asked, "do you know what the flute in Bai Mei's hand is?" Yiqing Luo shook her head. Old Man Sung sighed. "That's the flute of Dark Yin." "Flute of Dark Yin?" Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. She could tell. The long flute in Bai Mei's hand was filled with an extremely dense evil aura. When Bai Mei played the flute, the sinister aura became denser and denser. She roughly knew that this flute was given to Bai Mei by the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows as the last bargaining chip. But, from Old Man Song's mouth, he could roughly hear it. This flute was more troublesome than he had imagined. As you can imagine, the dark Yin flute is filled with dense Yin qi. Once it is blown, the Yin qi can completely bewitch a person's heart. Right now, Bai Mei's heart has been completely blinded by the evil energy. When she uses the dark Yin flute, she can only make those children who have already been implanted with the dark Yin flute feel the agony of the evil energy. Old Man Sung explained with a serious tone, if the dark flute of shadows was used by someone else, the effects would definitely not be limited to this. In other words, the mastermind of the Tenyu Palace gave the dark Yin flute to Bai Mei, but did not teach her how to use it. It was just that by using the profound Yin qi of the dark Yin flute as a medium, it allowed the profound Yin qi to go berserk in the World Group's brothers' bodies, causing their bodies to be unable to withstand such a burden, causing them to be in excruciating pain. If it was someone else, it was very likely that the palace master of the Netherworld Palace had used the mystical Yin qi to control the female disciples of the Linglong Palace to kill each other. This was indeed very troublesome. He had to think of a way to purge the profound Yin qi from his brothers' bodies. If the mystical Yin qi stayed in the body for too long, it would be extremely painful. The damage to the human body was extremely serious. She still had to think of a way to snatch the dark Yin flute away, in case Bai Mei blew the dark Yin flute again, tormenting the World Group's brothers. Chapter 4203. Old Man Sung said, "If I show myself, I'm afraid I'll attract the attention of the people behind Dark Palace." In other words, there was no other way. At the very most, he could only secretly help Yiqing Luo to cast a smokescreen, to cover up the fact that Yiqing Luo had lost her profound energy. "Yiqing Luo, what's wrong? Aren't you always arrogant and haughty? Now that you see the brothers you care about lying on the ground in pain, aren't you going to save them?" Bai Mei saw Yiqing Luo sitting on the ground with a gloomy expression, and the cold glint that flashed past the corner of her eyes made her shudder. In order to conceal the rising fear in the bottom of his heart, she suppressed the discomfort in her heart and continued, "Look at yourself now. Do you really deserve the title of Mistress of the Emperor Palace?" The girl sat motionlessly on the ground. This caused Bai Mei to feel a little suspicious, and a little fearful in her heart. Yiqing Luo was such a cunning and sinister person. Perhaps, this was a deliberate plan of hers. She had crossed hands with Yiqing Luo so many times. Towards Yiqing Luo's habits, he more or less had some understanding. She didn't dare to easily probe what tricks Yiqing Luo was up to. Bai Mei. Yiqing Luo slowly opened her mouth as her voice sounded inexplicably hoarse. She raised her eyes, and a faint red light flashed through them. This trace of red light caused Bai Mei's heart to tremble. She subconsciously stuttered, What? Yiqing Luo's pink lips twitched slightly as her smile was a little chilly. In order to send me to hell, you didn't hesitate to sell your own soul. If Xian were to find out that you've escaped from the balance historian's side and joined the secluded palace once again, what do you think he would think of you? Yiqing Luo's expression was extremely calm. The corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking smile, but at the same time, it was just the right amount of light. Bai Mei's pupils constricted. The young and beautiful face was slightly twisted. How dare you mention His Majesty? Do you really think I'm afraid of you? This scoundrel. If not for her appearance. How could Di Zun leave the two of them? She could still stand by Di Zun's side, silently holding his heart and secretly loving him. But, Yiqing Luo's appearance had disrupted all the rhythm. She had taken the venerable sovereign away. As a result, even Bai Su, her sister, could hardly see Di Zun. She was indeed much older than Dmo Xian. But, so what? She adored Dmo Xian. For Dmo Xian, she did not hesitate to change her face. How much effort had she expended to find a suitable, young, and beautiful face? Yiqing Luo, that slut, didn't put in any effort. What right did she have to become the overlord? He still had the cheek to strut around in front of her. What Yiqing Luo relied on was merely the overlord's favor. Right now, Di Zun was not by his side.
In her hands, she had enough tools to threaten Yiqing Luo. She wanted to see how Yiqing Luo could still be so unyielding. Thinking of this, Bai Mei gradually suppressed the fear in her heart. The fingers that were gripping tightly onto the dark Yin flute slowly lifted up and shook it slightly in front of Yiqing Luo. After seeing the young girl's slightly sunken expression, Roland's eyes widened. Bai Mei's heart was satisfied and her face was filled with complacency. Yiqing Luo, don't forget, your brother is still in my hands. Her eyes suddenly flashed past a sharp and thick black. Her figure suddenly pressed down towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Accompanied by the strong wind whistling and vibrating sound, Bai Mei's complacent voice was also heard.
Chapter 4204. Yiqing Luo's body instantly froze on the spot. Even if she lost her profound energy. With old man Song's help, she could avoid Bai Mei's attack. But Bai Mei's words made her feel as though her entire body was frozen into ice, unable to move. Her eyes were filled with an icy cold intent. Bai Mei sneered as she looked at the motionless Yiqing Luo, her gaze turned sinister. An irresistible attack. Surging in the strong wind. The strong profound wave shook everything around Yiqing Luo. As though in the next moment, Yiqing Luo was swallowed up. She was dead meat. The smile on Bai Mei's face gradually widened. Suddenly, the surging profound wave shook in the air. Just as it got close to Yiqing Luo. As though it was scattered by something. In a split second, it dispersed in midair. Bai Mei's smile froze on her face. Her eyes were filled with astonishment as she stared venomously at the fellow who spoiled her plans. She raised her eyes. Bai Mei saw a black-robed figure standing in front of Yiqing Luo at a moderate pace. The wide sleeves of his robe fluttered in the wind along with the aftershock. Under the strong wind. His tall and slender figure was extremely majestic and domineering. Bai Mei's face trembled as she bit her red lips and spoke unwillingly, "Palace Lord, what do you mean by this?" Right from the start. This palace lord of the secluded palace kept on spoiling their plans. She was willing to lower her stance and talk to him. But it didn't mean that she respected him. After all, he was a palace master in the palace of darkness on the surface. She had to give the revered some face. But in her heart, Bai Mei looked down on the palace lord of the secluded palace. If he was really doted on by the revered and was the next successor, how could the revered possibly pass the dark Yin flute to her behind his back? Because of this, after Bai Mei's plans were spoiled numerous times, her questioning tone wasn't as good as before. The man stood in front of the young lady. His expression was cold as that pair of dark eyes under the black robe locked onto Bai Mei. "My man, don't move. His voice was icy cold. Bai Mei's expression congealed. This is the revered's intention. Palace Master, are you going to disobey the High Lord's orders? Master only wants me to bring her back to the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. The Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows answered calmly. Everything I did was to bring her to the Palace of Darkness. Bai Mei growled unwillingly. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her. I'm here. You're not needed. You like her. Bai Mei pursed her red lips and a trace of anger appeared on her face. The Venerable One doesn't believe you, and we can't believe you either. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace laughed mockingly. I don't care whether you believe me or not. This person belongs to this Palace Master. If you interfere, this Palace Master will kill you and then apologize to Master. His words were enunciated clearly and enunciated word by word. But his tone was icy cold. Yiqing Luo totally couldn't tell if he was worried or concerned about her. The man standing in front of her. The change in his aura had already made her feel extremely unfamiliar. It was as if the person in front of him was still the same person, but his heart was different. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Finally, she retracted her gaze and placed it on Bai Mei. Her gaze clashed with Bai Mei. It fell into Bai Mei's eyes. This was Yiqing Luo using the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace's backing to provoke her. Chapter 4205. The Palace Master of Gloomy Palace smiled faintly and said, You can try and see if I'm more important in Master's heart or if you are more important. Bai Mei was both angry and embarrassed. Her face turned red. Of course, she didn't dare to compete with the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. She was very clear about her position. She was merely a tool used by the people behind the scenes in secluded Darkness Palace because of the grudge between her and Yiqing Luo. She knew very well how cruel the Venerable One could be. She suppressed her anger, clenched her fists, and spat out each word through gritted teeth. I hope the Palace Master will live up to the Venerable One's expectations. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness sneered, You don't have to worry about that. Bai Mei gritted her teeth and moved away. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes slightly and looked at the slender straight figure in front of her. The expression on his face did not change much. His eyes were calm and emotionless. Until the person in front of him turned around. The eyes under the black robe met hers. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly. Let him go and I will leave with you. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace didn't say anything. He just stared at her face with his dark eyes. He let out a low chuckle. He smiled. His voice was low and hoarse. Vaguely, it felt somewhat familiar. She furrowed her brows tightly, and there was some kind of emotion in her heart. By the side of her ear, his smiling voice was heard, interrupting her thoughts. Yiqing Luo, for your gang of brothers, you really can sacrifice anything. His smile seemed to contain some unfathomable meaning. It was like that in the past, and it's still like that now. With so many weaknesses, it'll be very difficult for you to succeed. He slowly squatted down, facing Yiqing Luo. When he leaned in close to her, using a voice that only the two of them could hear, he said, You know very well how I feel about you. You also know the other meaning of leaving with me. The current you, the you who has lost your profound strength, no matter what I want to do, you won't be able to resist. For those people, do you really want to go with me? Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled. It had another meaning. Another meaning between men and women. Naturally, she understood. But, you won't. Her tone was very calm, and she did not panic because of the man's words. You trust me that much? The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace seemed happy and smiled. Yiqing Luo looked at him calmly as she slowly shook her head. The people behind the secluded palace will not allow you to do this. Two people on opposing sides. There was no such thing as a credible topic. However, she knew that the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows were desperate to get their hands on her. And she had always been together with Dmo Xian. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had no chance at all. Therefore, that was why the Linglong Palace Hall was acting this way. Unexpectedly, during the time she was in the Linglong Palace. Coincidentally, she caught the eye of the blood-bone barbarian king, which led to the death of the Linglong Palace master. Not only did it implicate Dmo Xian. Almost the entire land domain was stirred up because of this. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had lost another chance. Just in time. It was also because of the matter between her and the barbaric blood-bone king. Even though he had sent Wu Fu, to test the waters. The Palace of Gloomy Shadows probably still had some doubts about her. In the end, they might as well make use of the brothers in the world group whom she cared about, to threaten her. How would the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness possibly give the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness the chance and time to take liberties with her? When the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness heard her reply, his laughter grew louder. Chapter 4206. Want to know? Why did they become my prisoners? The palace lord pointed at the world group's youngsters and young ladies who were lying on the ground panting heavily. Yiqing Luo stared at his face, which was covered by the black robe. Are you trying to tell me your real identity? The palace lord laughed so hard that his chest was heaving up and down. Do you want to know? Yiqing Luo replied without hesitation, yes. The man's laughter stopped abruptly. That pair of serene and dark pupils were like a bottomless whirlpool. After a moment of silence, his body leaned forward slightly. The face covered by the black robe was right in front of her eyes. He laughed softly. This mask will be taken off by you personally. Yiqing Luo's eyes reflected the man's black robe. Her eyes flickered. But she didn't move. Like this, the two of them maintained this posture for several breaths of time. She opened her mouth and her voice was calm. I don't have the energy to lift my hand, take it off yourself. His indifferent tone did not reveal much of his emotions. Such a rejection made the palace master of the Netherworld Palace laugh uncontrollably. He retracted his figure and slowly stood up. What a heartless woman, not even willing to give me a little bit of hope. He raised his hand. His slender long hand slowly landed on the black robe. Bit by bit, he pulled the black robe away. The black robe fluttered as it landed on the ground, slowly revealing the man's face. Yiqing Luo's first glance was met with a pair of glazed black eyes. His gentle temperament wasn't unfamiliar to her. His handsome, picturesque face was filled with gentleness and elegance. Totally unable to tell that he belonged to the dark side. His gentleness, like a noble prince, was emitted from his bones. Staring at the man in front of her, Yiqing Luo laughed. It's indeed you. Gu Jing, you. Yes. Gu Jing you. The man in front of her, wasn't he Nirvana Realm, Wind Valley Sect's young matriarch? Gu Jing you. Previously, because he was in the Imperial Palace, he had overstepped his boundaries. After that, he was imprisoned in the Wind Valley Sect's underground prison. But later on, because of the secluded Darkness Palace, there was a huge battle. Gu Jingyu had disappeared during the Great Battle. At that time, he probably went to the Palace of Darkness as the Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace raised her eyebrows and smiled gently. So, you already guessed it was me? As he spoke, he raised his hand and touched his face. Aren't you afraid that this face is another one of my disguises? Previously I had my suspicions. But I didn't have any evidence. Yiqing Luo looked at the man in front of her. As compared to the first time they met, he looked totally different. Your characteristics are ingrained in your bones. This cannot be imitated. From the moment he first saw the Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness, his gaze and the look in his eyes gave her a familiar feeling. However, he had never thought that he was someone from the Nirvana realm. Later on, he impersonated Dmo Xian, impersonated Patriarch Qiao. That pair of naked eyes. No matter how similar the imitation was, what was in his bones could not be faked. His gentle aura. No one could imitate it. Ha ha ha. Can I take it that you're praising me? Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. No, he should be called Gu Jingyu now. His dark red lips curled up slightly. Yiqing Luo sneered, "You've really concealed yourself very deeply." Chapter 4207. The brothers of the World Group laid on the ground, totally unable to move. They could only use a vicious gaze as they stared fiercely at Gu Jingyu. "It's you. It's you." Yan Xiaoyi was so infuriated that her eyes turned red. "You're actually the palace mistress of Secluded Palace. Gu Jingyu, you lied to us." The group of them, in order to reunite with Yiqing Luo in the Earth Realm. Every day, other than eating and sleeping time, they would be cultivating with all their might. Gue Yu and Ghost Robber would change their methods to train them daily. Gue Wu would occasionally give them pointers. Later on, they received news that Yiqing Luo had met with an accident in the Earth Realm. Everyone became even more anxious. They had finally raised their abilities to the Earth Realm, and Ghost Robber were willing to send them to the Earth Realm to reunite with Yiqing Luo. But unexpectedly, they had just reached the Earth Realm and met Gu Jingyu. That time in Nirvana Realm. Gu Jingyu and the World Group had met several times. They all understood Gu Jingyu's feelings towards Yiqing Luo. After all, he was someone who had saved Yiqing Luo and helped her before. They totally didn't have much vigilance in their hearts. When they heard Gu Jingyu say that he had always been with Yiqing Luo, he then told them some interesting things that Yiqing Luo had experienced in the Earth Realm. They instantly believed in Gu Jingyu. Following that, they followed Gu Jingyu to look for Yiqing Luo. After this search, when they opened their eyes again, they were already tied up and hung on the side of the cliff. By the side were those three ladies. They totally didn't suspect Gu Jingyu at all. The first thing they did was to worry about Gu Jingyu's safety. But no matter how they asked where Gu Jingyu was, while the three ladies were cursing and scolding or torturing them sinisterly, their tones seemed as though they didn't know Gu Jingyu. They had not expected. All of these were Gu Jingyu's scheme. It wasn't that Bai Mei and the others didn't know Gu Jingyu, but Gu Jingyu's identity was the palace mistress of Secluded Palace. The disciple of that revered of Secluded Palace. Facing the World Group's gazes, Gu Jingyu's smile didn't diminish as he was still as gentle as before. "This palace lord isn't considered to be lying to you. After all, you have indeed seen Yiqing Luo, isn't it?" Pooey. Yan Xiaoyi gritted her teeth and forced herself to get up from the ground. "If you have the ability, fight with my Ajin one-on-one. What kind of man are you to play tricks behind my back?" Xiao Jin, who was holding her hand tightly. "One-on-one? Are you sure it wasn't a one-sided beating by Gu Jingyu?" Yan Xiaoyi looked at Xiao Jin's expression and knew what he was thinking. She angrily flung his hand away. "Look at how useless you are, Xiao Jin." Yan Xiaoyi pursed her lips tightly as her gaze swiftly shot towards Yiqing Luo and stared at her own man resentfully for failing to meet her expectations. Using a voice that could only be heard by the two of them, "Huangfu family successor, can't even defeat a Gu Jingyu? Now isn't the time for you to conceal your ability. Haven't you noticed that Qing Luo's expression isn't right?" Xiao Jin's expression froze. "Ha ha ha. Such a pity, now. Do you have the ability to stand up for Yiqing Luo?" Gu Jingyu looked towards Bai Mei's direction. Bai Mei moved her fingers and the flute of dark Yin was placed by her lips. Several sharp flute sounds rang out. The brothers of the World Group instantly groaned in pain. Yan Xiaoyi's expression instantly turned pale. Cold sweat kept seeping out from her forehead. Xiao Jin suppressed his pain as he carried the young lady into his arms. Looking at the 10 over people who were groaning in pain on the ground, Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand as she tugged onto Gu Jingyu's robe. Chapter 4208. His ice-sealed eyes met Gu Jingyu's eyes without blinking. "Gu Jingyu." Gu Jingyu's eyes drooped as he looked at that fair slender hand on his arm as his lips curled into an unfathomable smile. He raised his other hand and stopped Bai Mei from blowing the flute. Yiqing Luo's breathing was slightly hurried. Her entire body seemed to be burning with a scorching fire, burning her. Her legs were trembling slightly. She couldn't muster up any energy at all. But the anger surging in her chest supported her will as the hand which was locked on Gu Jingyu's arm kept on tightening. Yiqing Luo, you. Bai Mei's sharp gaze shot over as she sized up Yiqing Luo suspiciously. When his line of sight fell on her legs, he felt a chill down his spine. Bai Mei's eyes lit up. Ah ha ha. I was wondering why you were so strange today. From the looks of it, you've suffered quite a serious injury. She was just saying, why was Yiqing Luo so low profile today? Initially, she thought it was because those people in the world group were controlled by her, so Yiqing Luo had some misgivings. But from the looks of it now, Yiqing Luo apparently couldn't even take care of herself. If one took a closer look, she could totally tell. Yiqing Luo's slightly trembling legs. And that extremely abnormally pale face. Bai Mei took a look at Gu Jingyu as a vicious glint flashed past her eyes. Palace Lord, since Yiqing Luo is seriously injured, we don't need to discuss any terms with her. Just kill all of them and we'll bring her back. Someone who couldn't even stand properly. Did she still need these threatening tools? With the Palace Lord of secluded darkness around, she probably wouldn't have the chance to make a move on Yiqing Luo. But she could also use another method to torture Yiqing Luo. She could tell that Yiqing Luo cared about her bunch of brothers extremely. Deep feelings and loyalty. Then, in front of Yiqing Luo, she could slowly torture these people to death. Whereas Yiqing Luo didn't even have the ability to save them. To Yiqing Luo, this was the real torture and agony. Why do I need you to tell me what to do? Gu Jingyu frowned and looked at Bai Mei with a cold look. Bai Mei gave a flirtatious smile. I'm only raising a suggestion, don't tell me. Palace Lord doesn't wish to break all of Yiqing Luo's wings, so that she can only choose to rely on you alone? He had to admit it. It was difficult for Bai Mei to capture the desire in a man's heart. As soon as he said this, Gu Jingyu's heart suddenly moved. Bai Mei covered her mouth and chuckled. Isn't this the best opportunity? When a woman has nothing left, she can only rely on you to live. There was something surging in Gu Jingyu's eyes. The pitch-black vortex expanded bit by bit. Seeing this, Bai Mei's gaze immediately swept towards the two people beside her. She lowered her voice and instructed, do it now, you must, use the cruelest method to kill those people. Hall Chief Wu Yan and Third Elder looked at each other before looking at Gu Jingyu with some fear. However, Gu Jingyu did not seem to object to Bai Mei's instructions. The two of them tried to test the waters as they walked towards the world group. Yiqing Luo's body moved as she lifted her feet and walked towards that direction. But her arm was held by Gu Jingyu. He used a little strength and pressed Yiqing Luo into his arms. Let go. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth as she cried out sharply. Chapter 4209. Yes. Belonged to him. Belonged to him alone. This thought kept on enlarging in Gu Jingyu's mind. It almost drove him crazy. His heart was beating uncontrollably for it. He wanted Yiqing Luo. He wanted Yiqing Luo. No matter what methods he used. As long as he could keep Yiqing Luo by his side, anything was possible. Gu Jingyu, have you gone mad? Yiqing Luo sensed that the man who was hugging her tightly had an abnormal change in his emotions. That pair of arms which were clasped on her seemed as though he wanted to knead her into his bones and blood. His entire body was emitting a sinister and terrifying vicious qi. As though he wanted to destroy something. As though he was about to step into hell. His aura spread wildly in all directions. Yiqing Luo struggled, trying to break free from the man's restraint. But Gu Jingyu seemed to have sunk into some kind of crazy self-consciousness. He couldn't hear her voice at all. He only kept on tightening his arms. Yiqing Luo was in pain again and she couldn't muster up any energy. Being pressed into his embrace, she was strangled till she couldn't breathe. Bai Mei saw Yi Qing Luo's situation and her red lips curled into a complacent maniacal sneer. Ha ha ha. Yi Qing Luo, don't worry, you'll be in even more pain soon. Stop struggling, save some energy and scream later. Her smile was malevolent, maniacal. He vented the jealousy and resentment that had accumulated in his chest for a long time. On the other side, Hall head Wu Yan and third elder had already walked in front of the world group. Xian Gui was like a huge mountain, blocking in front of those young men and young ladies. Jade eyes stared vigilantly at the surroundings. On the complicated patterns on the tortoise shell. That two intertwining things which looked like a snake or a dragon kept on intertwining as it stuck out its scarlet tongue. Both pairs of eyes were emitting a penetrating cold glint. Its huge body blocked Hall Master Wu Yan and the third elder. On the flat ground. The young men and women were panting heavily, trying to relieve the pain in their bodies from the twisting and twisting of their bodies. They could clearly hear the conversation between Bai Mei and Qing Luo. They wanted to resist, wanted to rebuke. But they didn't even have the energy to move. The minute Bai Mei blew that black flute. Inside their bodies, it was like a surging ocean, shaking and surging with turbulent waves. At first, they felt as if there were thousands of thin needles poking into their bodies. It was as if thousands of worms were gnawing away at their bodies. It stung and itched. Then, he felt as if he was on fire and as if he was in an ice house. Most painful and unbearable. It was in this asterisk. Their internal organs and bones all seemed to be broken, breaking one by one and then reforming one by one. It was accompanied by a kind of tearing pain. This made them unable to resist at all. Even now, Bai Mei had put down her flute. The pain in his body had yet to subside. Yan Xiaoyi panted heavily as her fingers clenched tightly into the flesh of her palm, gritting her teeth as she spoke out sharply, Qing Luo, we're all right. They can't hurt us. Yi Qing Luo's situation was obviously not right. They absolutely could not become Yi Qing Luo's burden. They could not let Yi Qing Luo sacrifice herself for them again. Xiao Jin looked at the woman's trembling body, her pale lips, and the sweat on her forehead due to the pain and exertion. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Chapter 42:10. Don't try to be brave. His breathing was a little messy. The hand on the lady's waist tightened. The flute is still in Bai Mei's hands. If you act rashly, everyone will be in trouble. Yan Xiaoyi heard that, her body tensed up, her fingers tightened. The anger in her eyes intensified. We will not become Qing Luo's burden. While he was saying this sentence, between his eyes, there seemed to be an indistinct, undetectable golden light. It set off that ordinary-looking face. It added a bit of holy and flawless charm to it. Yan Xiaoyi's tightly clenched fingers were pried open by Xiao Jin, stopping her from harming herself. Following that, he held her hand, in his palm. The man's warm and safe aura permeated her body and mind. Yan Xiaoyi's angry heart gradually calmed down. She held Xiao Jin's hand, her voice was soft but sonorous. If anything happens to the needle, you don't bother about Huangfu family. I don't want anyone to get into trouble. Xiao Jin's lips curled, his eyes filled with gentleness. I am the same as you, everyone is the same. Both of their words. The other 10 over people naturally heard what they said. Their chests seemed to be burning with the flames of war. It wasn't easy for them to get the chance to come to the Earth realm, to meet Yi Qing Luo, to let Yi Qing Luo verify their improvement. How could they be willing to die here like this? They weren't willing to become Bai Mei's tool to threaten Qing Luo. Not willing to become Qing Luo's burden. Not willing to see everyone in such pain. Final struggle. Bai Mei looked at the huge Xian Gui standing there, and sneered, the two of you just go ahead, I will settle that beast. Saying that, she leaped, attacking towards Xian Gui's direction. Between her fingers, the dark flute which was emitting a dense evil qi, became her weapon. Xian Gui was proficient in defense. The sturdy tortoise shell, almost indestructible. When Bai Mei's attack came, Xian Gui's entire body shook with jade light. Bai Mei was sent flying backward. Bai Mei sneered, not in a hurry. Lowering her eyes, her gaze on the dark flute for a few breaths. Her eyes flashed a trace of ruthlessness. So what if it was one of the ancient four sacred beasts? It had become that slut's war pet. She would kill them without hesitation. The flute spun like a compass at his fingertips. Bang! The green light and the evil yin qi intertwined in the air. Xian Gui's indestructible body was forced to take a step back. The vibrating jade green light also rippled with layers upon layers of waves. The strong evil aura of the dark yin flute even caused Xian Gui's turtle shell to show signs of cracking. Taking advantage of this moment, Hall Chief Wu Yan and Third Elder flew into the area protected by Xian Gui and went straight for the group of young boys and girls lying on the ground. He bent down and grabbed one of them by the collar and lifted him into the air. The young man's tender face was filled with pain. His face was extremely pale. But because of the sharp pain in his body, he didn't have the strength to struggle. Hall head Wu Yan dragged the young man and turned around, facing Yiqing Luo's direction. She could tell. Yiqing Luo cared a lot about these young men and young ladies. Just like how she cared about Wu Fuer. Since Yiqing Luo had hurt her Fu, time and time again. She would let Yiqing Luo have a taste of this pain. Hall Chief Wu Yan's face became distorted, his eyes filled with viciousness. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted as she stared deadly at Hall Chief Wu Yan's hand. Chapter 42:11. Burning. Scorching. As though a volcano had erupted within her. Her body was extremely tense. As though something was unable to control this oppression and was about to explode. Perhaps Hall head Wu Yan's strength had increased. The young man groaned in pain as his teeth seeped out. Hall head Wu Yan gave a sinister smile as he raised his hand. His palm was filled with a thick profound energy, mixed with a thick profound yin qi. As though it was played in slow motion, bit by bit, it pressed down towards the young man's head. His mouth was still laughing sinisterly. Yiqing Luo, say. This palm, pressing down from his head, what do you think will happen? It must be very exciting, very exciting. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated bit by bit. Her eyes were covered with a bright red glow, as it was fixed on Hall head Wu Yan's palm without blinking. The anger in her chest was burning wantonly. Her entire body was trembling. Looking at Yiqing Luo's expression, Hall head Wu Yan only felt carefree. Her hand was already on the young man's head. Just a little bit of strength. She could directly crush that head. She gave a sinister smile. Now. You know this feeling? When my Fu was bullied by you, I also felt the same way. As she spoke, her expression turned slightly crazy. The young man who was being dragged groaned in pain. But that young tender face was filled with stubbornness. He raised his head, obviously groaning in pain, but he still forced himself to hold on, as his eyes looked towards Yiqing Luo, saying word by word, say. Madam Qing Luo, don't care about me, save everyone. Every word he spat out was laboriously panting. But the tightness of her throat, and that pair of icy cold bone-piercing hands covering her head. It made it extremely difficult for her to even breathe. After he finished his words, blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He forcefully shut his eyes. His heart was obviously filled with fear. But he still forced himself to hold on, to calm himself down. The young man's stubborn voice, as well as his duty-bound attitude, pierced deeply into the young lady's eyes. Her chest seemed to have a ball of raging fire. Hate herself. Failed to protect them. They trusted her so much. Trusted. Gu Jingyu, who was hugging Yiqing Luo tightly, suddenly stiffened. It was as if he had been burned by fire. He immediately let go of the person in his arms and took a few steps back. His gentle eyes stared at the person in front of him in shock. A girl who had lost the support of her strength. His body did not fall to the ground. Instead, he stood there with his back straight. No, not standing. To be more precise, it was floating there. Yes, floating. Yiqing Luo's body was surrounded by a violent red light. The roots intertwined around the girl. The girl was like a marionette. The strong wind whistled. The girl's red dress flew in the air. It was like a blazing flame, dazzling and eye-catching. Gu Jingyu looked at her blankly. From time to time, he would lower his head and look at the hands that had just embraced the girl. There was still a burning sensation in his palm. What was going on? Didn't she lose her profound energy? Now, what exactly was this surging aura? It was actually so powerful. Could it be, it was because Hall Master Wu Yan had acted against her brothers? Which agitated her? Yiqing Luo's movements attracted Hall Master Wu Yan and Third Elder's attention. Both of their expressions changed drastically. After exchanging glances. Chapter 42:12. Gu Jingyu's eyelids twitched, and when he looked at the young lady, his expression changed as he cried out sternly, "Stop! Stop!" Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder thought that Gu Jingyu was standing up for Yiqing Luo again. He didn't even turn his head back. Clenching his teeth, his hands didn't stop as he struck downwards. Gu Jingyu wanted to stop him, but it was too late. His figure swiftly retreated backwards. All the muscles in his body were tensed up due to nervousness. Bam, at the same time. The place where he was standing earlier. No, to be more accurate. It was within the radius of 10 meters where the young lady was standing. An explosion sound pierced through the sky. Between the shock waves, sand and dust rolled. Tyrannical and overbearing energy fluctuation. As though it was going to drown everything in the world. His heart suddenly tightened. Indeed. She was infuriated. Earlier at that instance, he saw. The young lady slowly opened her eyes. A bewitching red, extremely resplendent. The most shocking thing was, under that red glow, there was a layer of frost. Just one look and it made Gu Jingyu's entire body turn cold, as he was terrified. Whereas on the other side, Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder's actions didn't stop, as though they were using a lightning-fast speed, intending to explode the young man's head in front of Yiqing Luo. This palm fell down without any obstruction. Excited blood was boiling in his body. Hall Head Wu Yan opened his mouth, sticking out his tongue to lick, preparing to enjoy the pleasure of the blood entering his mouth. In the blink of an eye, a deafening explosion sound was heard by the side of their ears. Following that was a tyrannical and overbearing energy, as it spread in the air. And at the same time, at the moment when the explosion sound was heard, mixed with a deep and low dragon's roar. The deepest part of her soul was shocked by this dragon's roar. Not waiting for Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder's reaction, a bone-piercing hurricane sprinted over. Immediately following that, her body seemed to have been hit by something, fiercely. Her entire body instantly felt intense pain. Their bodies were directly sent flying by the attack. Bam! The two of them fell heavily onto the ground. That vicious pressure almost squeezed her internal organs into a ball. Large mouthfuls of blood flowed uncontrollably from the corner of his mouth. Their eyes were filled with shock and terror as they stared in disbelief at the place where they had just been standing. A huge blue giant came into their sight. Dragon. It's a dragon. Hall leader Wu Yan's voice was hoarse, and his entire body was trembling. The Third Elder was so stunned that he couldn't say a word. His seemingly benevolent face was constantly twisting and changing as his expression changed. Dragon, yes, this was a gigantic creature that was hovering in the sky, almost covering the entire sky. It was a blue dragon covered in blue dragon scales, as if it was wearing battle armor. They almost widened their eyes. The person who bumped into them just now, it was this dragon? Dragon, even for them, they had never seen a dragon in the Earth domain for so many years. Where did this dragon come from? It wasn't just Hall leader Wu Yan and the third elder who were shocked. Even Bai Mei was so shocked by the sudden appearance of the dragon that she almost dropped her flute of dark yin. Her delicate body could not stop trembling. He was both excited and agitated. She knew that Yiqing Luo had a dragon. She was so jealous that she was about to go crazy. This blue dragon absolutely did not look any worse off than Yiqing Luo's. If she could subdue this blue dragon, to be of use to her. Chapter 42:13. Bai Mei had already forgotten. The moment the blue dragon appeared, it directly sent Hall Master Wu Yan and third elder flying. Her stomach was filled with boiling hot blood as her eyes were filled with uncontrollable greed. The sky-shaking dragon roar was still ringing, as though it could move the heaven and earth. That huge blue dragon, the blue dragon body, circled a few rounds in midair. Bit by bit, it slowly landed on the ground. The huge spiraling body. It surrounded the world group's young men and women. Because of the blue dragon's appearance, Bai Mei's vision was almost glued onto the blue dragon's body. Xian Gui immediately turned around and stood next to the blue dragon. Third elder stared at that huge dragon's head in a daze. The blue dragon's eyes and that floating dragon whiskers. Their breathing became hurried. Hall Master Wu Yan couldn't help but tremble from excitement. He didn't even care that his internal organs were almost shattered because of the blue dragon's collision. This dragon, where did it come from? Why is there a dragon? It's a dragon, this body shape, it's definitely an adult dragon. This kind of exclamation made Bai Mei's restless heart even more excited. She licked her lips greedily. Her gaze fell onto Gu Jingyu. She tried to get closer as she tried to probe. Palace Lord, Yiqing Luo also has a dragon. If Palace Lord is able to get this dragon, then you will be able to go against Yiqing Luo's dragon. No one didn't want to get a dragon with outstanding ability. Bai Mei made up her mind to take the opportunity when Gu Jingyu went to get that dragon. She would take the opportunity to pick up the scraps from behind. As long as she got this blue dragon. She was a lady who had the blue dragon's protection. Even if the revered wanted her life, he would have to give face to the blue dragon and let her off. By then, she would have an additional layer of protection as compared to Gu Jingyu. However, she was filled with caution and probing. But she didn't get any response from Gu Jingyu. Bai Mei repeated her question again. But she discovered that Gu Jingyu's vision was fixed in one direction, not even blinking for a moment. That direction. Not the direction of the blue dragon. As though he totally didn't notice the blue dragon's appearance. The shock and astonishment on his face wasn't directed at the appearance of the blue dragon. Bai Mei followed Gu Jingyu's line of sight and looked in that direction. Suddenly, he felt as if his heart was being squeezed by something. Her eyes widened in horror. The joy and excitement from the blue dragon's appearance were now replaced by shock. Because, what entered his eyes was a pair of fiery red eyes. Her eyes were as seductive as a fox's and seemed to be burning with raging flames. However, it gave off a chill that rose from the bottom of one's feet to the top of one's head. The coldness of the eyes spread throughout his limbs and bones. Bai Mei had never seen such terrifying eyes. There seemed to be a scream in his throat that wanted to gush out. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make a single sound. It was Yiqing Luo. That was Yiqing Luo. At this moment, Yiqing Luo's entire body was enveloped in a layer of ice-condensed ripples. The profound waves rippled, and if one did not carefully sense it, they would not be able to sense it at all. Bai Mei's eyes widened in disbelief. Just now, her heart was only on the blue dragon. Totally neglected Yiqing Luo's existence. Wasn't Yiqing Luo seriously injured and didn't even have the energy to move on her own? Why? Why did she still have such a strong imposing manner? Most importantly, Her entire body was emitting such a thick and powerful profound wave. Except for Gu Jingyu. Chapter 42:14. Bai Mei felt that something was slowly getting out of her control. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the dark Yin flute in her hands. As long as she had the dark Yin flute in her hands. As long as Yiqing Luo still cared about those people in the world group. Yiqing Luo would absolutely not be able to create any waves. Bai Mei kept hinting at herself in her heart. But her heart was beating wildly. There was no way to control it. She pressed on her restless chest as her sinister eyes squinted. No way. She must first contract with that dragon. As long as that blue dragon became her war pet. No matter what Yiqing Luo wanted to do, there was nothing to fear. Bai Mei tightened her fingers as her gaze swept past Yiqing Luo. Following that, her figure moved and she had already charged towards the direction of the blue dragon. The gazes of the few of them all landed on Lan Long suddenly. They saw a figure descending from the sky. Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder were both stunned. When they fixed their eyes, they saw the face of the person who descended from the sky clearly. It was Bai Mei. She speedily neared the blue dragon as she raised her hand and bit hard on her finger. Fresh red blood droplets slowly dripped onto the blue dragon. Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder's pupils dilated. A glint of strangeness and greed flashed past their eyes. Almost at the same time. The two of them took action at the same time. Casually grabbing a handful of sand from the ground, they scattered it towards the dripping blood droplets. Just as the blood droplets were about to land on the blue dragon, the sand swirled wildly, like a hot knife through butter. It forcefully blended the dripping blood droplets into the sand. Bai Mei saw that she was about to forcefully contract with the blue dragon. But she was stopped by Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder. Her eyes instantly turned red from anger. She stared fiercely at the both of them. Every man for himself, heaven and earth shall destroy him. Hall Head Wu Yen didn't even bother to take a look at Bai Mei as he speedily flew towards the blue dragon. This blue dragon, I want it. Get lost. This is my war pet. Third Elder's benevolent-looking face was filled with greed. The three of them clashed together. All of them wanted to stop the other party from forcefully contracting the blue dragon. The intense pain caused by the dark Yin flute in the world group which was encircled by the blue dragon had already reduced by quite a bit. Their faces were pale as they slowly sat up. They looked at the huge blue dragon in front of them, which had almost formed a wall around them. All of them opened their mouths wide in astonishment. Following Yiqing Luo. They were experienced and knowledgeable. It was not the first time he had seen a dragon. But, to get so close to a dragon and be surrounded by its body, this was the first time. Yan Xiaoyi raised her head to look at the huge dragon's head. She stared unblinkingly at the pair of blue eyes and furrowed her brows. Ah Jean, don't you feel that this blue dragon is very familiar? She did not know why, but she just felt that this blue dragon was very close to him. She could not sense any hostility from the blue dragon. Xiao Jin held her shoulders lightly, his gaze sizing up the blue dragon, and nodded, saying, "It seems to be protecting us." They were trapped in the dragon's body. Not to stop them from escaping. Instead, it protected them within its range of protection. Xiao Yi. A weak voice was heard. Ni Ruopan also sat up straight, her face extremely pale. Group leader, we have to save group leader. Just now Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing were thrown down the cliff. Chapter 42:15. Yan Xiaoyi went over to support the swaying Ni Ruopan as her vision looked towards the edge of the cliff which was on the verge of collapse. Quite a number of them heard Ni Ruopan's words. They all raised their heads as their faces were filled with worry. Group leader is so incredible, he won't let anything happen to him. Yan Xiaoyi smiled. Ah Jin and I will go down to look for group leader and Ziqing, you guys take care. With the blue dragon's protection. Yan Xiaoyi heaved a sigh of relief. Bai Mei and those two middle-aged women started killing each other for the blue dragon's ownership. As long as they controlled Bai Mei not to blow the flute in her hands, they didn't need to worry. After they got Long Yunjian and Tong Ziqing back, they only needed to think of a way to expel the impurities in their bodies which were controlled by Bai Mei. They wouldn't become Yiqing Luo's burden. The both of you be careful, I will protect everyone. Lu Xiaoyu stood out. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin were about to fly up and jump out of the blue dragon's protection circle. The blue dragon's body suddenly moved. The trembling hurricane made the both of their actions halted. The next moment, they saw a figure sliding down from the blue dragon's scales. Yan Xiaoyi subconsciously rushed forward and steadily caught the person who was falling straight down. The soft petite body was filled with a thick stench of blood. When Yan Xiaoyi saw the person in her arms, her expression changed immediately. Ziqing? The person who slid down from the dragon's scales, wasn't it? Tong Ziqing, who used her own body to slow down the speed of falling to save Long Yunjian. Where's group leader? Where is he? Yan Xiaoyi hugged Tong Ziqing tightly as her gaze swiftly shifted onto the blue dragon, looking around. The blue dragon had brought Tong Ziqing up from the bottom of the cliff. It should have saved Long Yunjian too. But, no matter how they searched, they didn't see Long Yunjian's figure on the blue dragon's back. Yan Xiaoyi carefully placed Tong Ziqing, who was covered in blood, on the ground. Ni Ruopan and Lu Xiaoyu immediately went up to support her, using their knees as a pillow for Tong Ziqing. Baiming Lu immediately took out a medicine box from her space pocket and bandaged Tong Ziqing's wounds. Why don't I see group leader? Yan Xiaoyi's brows creased even tighter as she looked at Xiao Jin in puzzlement. Xiao Jin's expression was solemn. I'll go over to take a look. He was just about to leave. The blue dragon blocked his path again. A huge dragon head stretched out, and a dragon's breath sprayed down. A low dragon roar came from its mouth. Xiao Jin paused and glanced sideways at Yan Xiaoyi. He seems to be stopping us. Yan Xiaoyi pursed her lips. She felt it too. Every time she and Xiao Jin wanted to go down the cliff to look for Long Yunjian and Tong Ziqing, Blue Dragon would stop them. What was going on? This dragon roar. The blue dragon pressed even lower. However, the prestige of the dragon race was still there. A dragon's breath. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. The three of them who were fighting immediately looked at Blue Dragon. Seeing how Long and the World Group's attitude was so intimate, Bai Mei's face immediately sunk, and with a backhand palm, the two middle-aged women in front of her flew out. Two idiots. Don't let those people take advantage of us. Bai Mei gritted her teeth and shouted angrily at the two of them. Then, she quickly flew towards the Blue Dragon. Hall leader Wu Yan and the third elder's faces also darkened slightly. But looking at how intimate the blue dragon was with those little brats, they could only bear with the greed in their hearts. Don't let them kill each other here. Instead, let those little brats contract the blue dragon. Chapter 42:16. Bai Mei's speed was extremely fast. After locking onto the blue dragon, Hall head Wu Yan and third elder didn't stop her. Her finger, which was still stained with blood, it directly pressed onto the blue dragon's body. The moment her blood came into contact with the dragon's scales, Bai Mei's eyes shone with ecstasy. Success. Success. She was going to become a cultivator who owned a dragon as a war pet. She was going to obtain this dragon and make it her slave and her own weapon. In the future, she wouldn't have to lower herself anymore. The more Bai Mei thought about it, the more excited she was. But in the next instant, the smile on her face froze. The blue dragon, which was stained with her blood, casually shook its huge body. That smear of blood instantly dissipated. It didn't affect the blue dragon at all. Bai Mei opened her mouth wide in shock, unable to believe her own eyes. A powerful beast like the dragon clan. As long as her blood dripped onto the dragon's body, It would more or less affect the dragon's emotions. She could even use the blood to fuse with the dragon and form a telepathic link with the dragon. As long as she could convince this dragon, let it accept her willingly, this dragon would become her slave. But why, this dragon was completely unaffected? She couldn't even form a telepathic link with that dragon? Bai Mei gritted her teeth, unwilling and unable to give up. She stretched out her hand once again and pressed onto the blue dragon's body. This time, the blue dragon was long prepared. When Bai Mei was about to get close, the blue dragon's tail swung and smashed heavily onto her back. The force of the blow caused Bai Mei's throat to gush out a large mouthful of blood. Her entire face turned deathly pale from the pain. Bai Mei rolled on the ground and immediately rolled out of the blue dragon's aura range before she stood up. The moment she moved, an intense pain came from her chest. She pressed onto her chest forcefully and gritted her teeth as she raised her head and stared angrily at the huge creature. She couldn't form a contract. She couldn't form a contract with this blue dragon. Could it be that this blue dragon already had an owner? It refused her to get close. But it took the initiative to get close to the bunch of trash in the world group. Furthermore, from the looks of it, it was circling around the bunch of trash in the world group. Was he protecting them in an absolute manner? That dragon, surely it couldn't be. Belonged to Yiqing Luo, right? Yiqing Luo. That's right. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei immediately turned to look at the young girl who was still standing at the same spot with her eyes wide open and an imposing aura emanating from her body. No matter how strong the flames around him were, the girl didn't move at all. Even if that pair of treacherous and enchanting red eyes were open, he didn't even blink. Bai Mei's brows twitched. A strange feeling welled up in her heart. Her eyes flashed, and she suppressed the oppressive feeling brought by the young girl's aura. She looked straight at the young girl. There was something wrong with Yiqing Luo. It was as though he had lost his sense of self. Bai Mei pursed her lips tightly. After staring at Yiqing Luo for several breaths, there was no more hesitation. His figure moved and his figure had already neared Yiqing Luo. The surging profound waves were like sharp blades. The piercingly cold dark light constantly shook the air. When Bai Mei approached, she felt an endless pressure corroding her body and mind. She forcefully endured it as the corners of her lips curled upwards. Her young and beautiful face revealed a sinister expression. Immediately after, both her hands directly locked onto the young girl's shoulders. Bai Mei. Gu Jingyu's vision was fixed on Yiqing Luo. Chapter 42:17. Gu Jingyu also moved his body. But his speed was after all a little too slow. Bai Mei had already locked Yiqing Luo as her 5 fingers sealed Yiqing Luo's neck. Stop. Gu Jingyu stood by Bai Mei's side as he stretched out his hand to stop her. Bai Mei didn't evade as her lips curled into a cold smile. Palace Lord, if you move, I'll strangle her to death right now. As she said that, her 5 fingers tightened. The young lady's unblinking red eyes started to fluctuate. Her expressionless face turned slightly pale. She didn't struggle. But apparently, she was affected by Bai Mei's strength. Gu Jinyu's hand, which was stretched out in mid-air, froze. His face was filled with anger. Bai Mei. Bai Mei wasn't affected by the threat as she held onto Yiqing Luo tightly as she took quick steps towards the direction of the blue dragon. The moment she clamped down on the young lady, those youngsters in the world group who were encircled by the blue dragon all felt their hearts being lifted up. Their faces were filled with worry for Yiqing Luo. Suddenly they saw Bai Mei dragging Yiqing Luo as she headed towards their direction. All of them stood up, wanting to catch Yiqing Luo. But Bai Mei only held on to Yiqing Luo as the flute in her hand was pressed against Yiqing Luo's neck. Suddenly, a huge dragon head drooped down as it met her eyes. The dragon's breath was whistling and that pair of bronze bell-like huge dragon eyes seemed to be even bigger than Bai Mei's head. It was threatening her to let go of Yiqing Luo. Receiving this hint, Bai Mei smiled instead. You contract with me and I will let go of Yiqing Luo. Indeed. The appearance of this dragon was related to Yiqing Luo. She took the opportunity when Yiqing Luo had no way to resist to make use of her to threaten the blue dragon. If the blue dragon cared about Yiqing Luo, she would be able to subdue this dragon. If the blue dragon didn't care about Yiqing Luo, she would kill Yiqing Luo and it would be considered as ending her old enemy. No matter which point, she wouldn't lose out. Bai Mei, you're despicable and shameless. Yan Xiaoyi was so infuriated when she heard this. Just based on you and you want to contract the blue dragon? Pooey. Bai Mei was scolded but she didn't get angry. I advise you, you'd better help me and persuade that dragon. If I can't contract with it, at most, let Yiqing Luo accompany me in death. I have nothing to worry about, so if I die then so be it. But Yiqing Luo is different. If she dies, you bunch of brothers who value relationships and righteousness would be heartbroken. Blue Dragon's azure eyes were filled with anger and annoyance towards Bai Mei. A powerful dragon breath gushed out of its nostrils and slammed into Bai Mei's face. Bai Mei sneered as she stabbed her flute fiercely towards Yiqing Luo's neck. The dark-green flute which was encircled with evil qi was like a sharp blade, piercing through Yiqing Luo's skin. Blood gushed out from her neck. I don't want to waste my breath on you. Either she dies, or you make a contract with me. Bai Mei shouted. Her face was filled with a maniacal sneer. The strength of his hand was also extremely tight. However, her nervousness was hidden in the depths of her eyes. The blood that gushed out caused the blue dragon's eyes to flicker. Its head also retreated a little. It saw that this blue dragon indeed cared about Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei continued, after the contract, I will let her go, as well as everyone else here. Only a ghost would believe your words. Yan Xiaoyi spat fiercely as she shouted, Blue Dragon, you absolutely cannot believe her. She dares to hurt Qing Luo. When the Overlord rushes over, she will suffer more than death. Bai Mei's hand trembled slightly. Chapter 42:18. Bai Mei gritted her teeth as she looked at the young lady who was still frozen stiff and motionless. Her eyes squinted slightly. Now that things had come to this, there was no room for her to retreat anymore. These people, this dragon, would not give her any way out. She sneered as her face was filled with madness. Before the Overlord rushes over, I will kill her. Even if I want to go to hell, I will drag her down with me. As she said that, she moved the flute closer to Yiqing Luo's neck. Under the furious gazes of the crowd who didn't dare to act rashly, Bai Mei took out her bitten hand and passed it over to the blue dragon. I don't want to waste time with you. Make your own choice. Do you want to become my slave and respect me, or do you want to give up? Yiqing Luo. The azure blue dragon's eyes were glistening with a dark whirlpool. The dragon's whiskers floated, showing its anger. I will count to 3, if you are still unable to decide, I will decide for you. Bai Mei had no intention to drag the time. If she waited till the Overlord sensed something amiss and rushed over, not only would she not be able to kill Yiqing Luo, she would have to die here. 1. The dragon's breath sprayed as energy fluctuated. 2. The whirlwind turned into a whirlpool. The entire sky seemed to be dyed by a patch of black ink. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. That was the blue dragon's majesty. Bai Mei was expressionless as she maintained her posture and slowly spat out the last number, 3. When the third number was spat out, the blue dragon's breath was extremely coarse and heavy. Its huge body shook slightly. The ground also shook and cracked, setting off endless sand and dust. The huge dragon's body tightened bit by bit. The strong hurricane blew against Bai Mei's face, as though a knife was cutting her skin. Bai Mei suppressed the fear as her legs turned into jelly as she clenched her teeth and looked towards that azure blue dragon's eyes. The hand holding the dark-green flute slowly moved from Yiqing Luo's neck to her chest, stopping at the position of her heart. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. Her eyes were filled with madness. As though she had lost her rationality. No one dared to move easily. He didn't dare to use Yiqing Luo's life as a bet. Each and every one of them was on guard as they glared threateningly at Bai Mei. After seeing Bai Mei's actions, everyone's hearts were in their throats. The blue dragon let out a low roar. The dragon's eyes fell on Bai Mei's raised hand. Then, it slowly lowered its head and approached the hand. Blue dragon. You really want to form a contract with her? When Yan Xiaoyi saw Blue Dragon's actions, she was so shocked that she almost jumped up. If you become her war pet, she will request you to kill all of us. People like Bai Mei. Once she was given a chance to turn things around, he would definitely strut around and stand on your head. Blue Dragon's movements paused slightly. His azure blue eyes flickered with a strange light. But very soon, it restrained the thoughts in its eyes. Little by little, he approached Bai Mei. Looking at the approaching blue dragon, Bai Mei's face was filled with excitement and a proud smile. He was so excited that the blood in his body was boiling. The corners of his lips couldn't help but widen into the biggest arc. When the blue dragon was just a little bit away from her blood-stained hand, the blue dragon suddenly stopped. She couldn't wait. Chapter 42:19. Bang, something seemed to explode in the air. A scream broke through the sky. Then, the entire space was filled with majestic and terrifying waves. Bang, another sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. A figure fell heavily to the ground. The sand on the ground shook and smoke rolled. The person who fell to the ground twitched a few times on the ground, then stopped moving. Roar. A violent dragon roar was deafening. The sound waves formed rippled in the surroundings. The huge dragon body suddenly flew up into the sky. The dragon's body coiled and twisted in circles. The blue dragon's scales were like indestructible armor. The huge dragon head was raised high up in the sky. The dragon's might was unstoppable. Miss Bai. Miss Bai. Two exclamations were heard. Hall Master Wu Yan and the third elder had rushed to the direction covered by the smoke and dust. There, Bai Mei was bending her body in pain and there was a large pool of blood under her body. Their expressions changed slightly and the hands that were stretched out to support Bai Mei stopped. What was going on? Didn't the blue dragon willingly and obediently contract with Bai Mei? Why did it suddenly? What was going on? Not only the two of them were stunned. Everyone at the scene was dumbfounded. Only the man in a bamboo-colored brocade robe standing not far away, with a gentle face and a serious expression, had a look of understanding in his eyes. He wasn't surprised at all. As if he had already expected this outcome. He raised his head slightly. His gentle black eyes looked at the sky, at the body of the blue dragon that was coiled up. He squinted his eyes slightly. He could vaguely see, on the blue dragon, there was a slender figure standing against the wind. The flames were like fire. Extremely flirtatious. Suddenly, he chuckled softly. Indeed, no matter when. No matter how dangerous the situation was. As long as it was her, she could always turn things around again. She always had the ability to trigger miracles. She was obviously already at a disadvantage. He only needed to take the last step to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness. A good hand of cards. But he was beaten to a pulp. In Gu Jingyu's eyes, it was hard to tell whether he was smiling or helpless. He was very clear. Now, he had already lost the initiative. He had also lost control of Yiqing Luo. Today's plan was destined to fail. His eyes stared deeply at the blue dragon for a while. Then, he turned around and quietly disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on Bai Mei, who had been sent flying. Moreover, he didn't notice that a person had already disappeared from the battlefield. Bai Mei collapsed to the ground. Even now, he still couldn't believe how he had been sent flying. Obviously, she had already reached her hand into the blue dragon's mouth. He was about to feed it his own blood. He could already form a contract with the blue dragon. But, why did it become like this? Bai Mei widened her eyes. The young and beautiful face was slightly distorted. Her clothes were stained with fresh blood, and her face was also stained with blood, making her look extremely miserable. She looked at the blue dragon that had distanced itself from her unwillingly. That was her battle pet, her Suddenly, Bai Mei's eyes blinked. His face was filled with astonishment. Following that, he blinked fiercely as his eyes stared at a certain direction without blinking. After that, as though he had confirmed something, his face twisted and his eyes were filled with venomous hatred. Yiqing Luo. It's you, it's you. Her body was trembling from agitation. Chapter 42:20. When the dust dissipated. The figure standing on top of the blue dragon appeared clearly in front of everyone's eyes. Like a fiery red robe, a devastatingly beautiful face. Her lips curled into an unbridled cold smile. Wasn't it Yiqing Luo? It's her, how could it be her? Bai Mei's chest was filled with raging fury and disbelief. Yiqing Luo had obviously lost her strength. Yiqing Luo was obviously at her mercy earlier, unable to resist. Could it be that all of this was actually an act by her? Just to tease her? Bai Mei's mind was in a mess. Her malevolent face twisted as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws, trying to climb up and strangle Yiqing Luo to death. But, the moment she moved, her entire body emitted a heart-wrenching pain. As though her bones were being smashed one by one. How dare you snatch my partner? The young lady's icy cold voice was filled with endless chill. Indistinctly, it was mixed with anger. She looked down at Bai Mei from above, her icy cold imposing manner pressured the surrounding air, as though it had solidified. Using me to threaten him, who gave you the guts to do so? Bai Mei's breathing congealed as her ears were filled with the young lady's icy cold words. This angle coincidentally met with Yiqing Luo's line of sight. She could clearly see that young lady's pair of flirtatious red eyes. Blood-colored eyes, the corners of her eyes rose, outlining a wavy flower tail. Amidst the flow of light, the red light flickered, resplendent and eye-catching. This kind of direct stare without any concealment. As compared to earlier, when she met with Yiqing Luo's gaze, it was even. Making Bai Mei's heart tightened into a ball. Bai Mei's body shrank as her eyes swept around in terror. Trying to find Gu Jingyu's figure, to seek help. But, her gaze surveyed the surroundings. But she didn't see Gu Jingyu's figure at all. Hall head Wu Yan and third elder stood by the side, looking at her with an extremely complicated expression. Bai Mei was infuriated as her face flushed an abnormal shade of red, as blood continued to rush to her head. Help me up. Help me up immediately. Hall head Wu Yan and third elder looked at each other in dismay, but no one moved. Bai Mei clenched her fists tightly as her entire body was trembling. The both of you. Do you want to die? Don't think that I can't take the lives of the two of you in my current state. She clenched her teeth, enduring the pain in her body and the tearing pain, and sat up straight. He was in a sorry state. The blood was viscous. Her nose was filled with the thick smell of blood. She held it in with great difficulty, her voice extremely tense. That dragon has already been stained with my blood. Forming a contract with it is only a matter of time. That belongs to me. Mine. Bai Mei lifted the hand that she had forcefully stuffed into the blue dragon's mouth. Then, the flute of dark Yin slid across his arm. The bite wound was enlarged a little. Warm and viscous blood gushed out quickly. Bai Mei's face was contorted. She gently placed the flute of umbra on the wound. Lowering her head, her trembling lips pressed against the flute of darkness. Everyone in the world group subconsciously held their breaths as they stared at Bai Mei with vigilance and pain. They were restless and wanted to snatch the flute of dark Yin. However, when the sound of the flute rang out, everyone was in a daze. The heart-wrenching pain that they had imagined did not engulf their bodies and minds. The woman who was playing the flute continued to play. The dense evil Yin Qi slowly fused with the blood on her wound. The reason why Bai Mei played the flute of dark Yin was not to torture them. But Chapter 42-21. Oh no, lass. Old Man Sung's anxious voice suddenly rang in Yiqing Luo's mind. Bai Mei intends to use the dark Yin flute's power to pollute this human dragon's heart. She wants to force a contract with the human dragon. Yiqing Luo's eyes were fixed on Bai Mei's actions. A dense evil energy that was visible to the naked eye was constantly attacking Bai Mei's wound. Bai Mei's hand trembled even more. Even his forehead was dripping with sweat. Apparently, when she used the evil qi, she didn't feel any better. But she didn't hesitate, nor did she hesitate. She continued to play the flute. Lass, you must stop Bai Mei's actions immediately. Old Man Sung continued. Earlier, the human dragon indeed came into contact with Bai Mei's blood. This has some influence on the human dragon. If Bai Mei uses the dark Yin flute to pollute the human dragon, there is a possibility. She can use the dark Yin flute to control the human dragon to contract with her. Listening to Old Man Sung's words, Yiqing Luo frowned. She took a look at Bai Mei. Then, he looked down at the blue dragon below him, whose body was continuously coiled up and turning. He could feel that. Right now, he was already somewhat affected by it. Yiqing Luo squatted down and placed one hand on the blue dragon's horn as she lowered her voice. Ah Jean, stay awake, don't fall into Bai Mei's trap. Hearing her voice, the blue dragon's eyes blinked. His azure blue eyes seemed to be sparkling with water. The dragon's breath spurted and his beard fluttered. Yiqing Luo continued, I'll stop her. You're just stained with a little bit of her blood. I will try my best to erase the connection between you two. She paused as her red eyes revealed some determination. What you need to do is to stabilize your rationality, stay awake and wait for me. Ao, the blue dragon let out a low growl. It was filled with majesty and one could tell that it was suppressing a huge amount of pain. Yiqing Luo's vision turned. The red eyes were fixed on Bai Mei. She didn't hesitate. She leaped. The slender figure turned into a red shadow as it swept across the horizon. But in the blink of an eye, she was already standing in front of Bai Mei. Immediately, she raised her hand. The flame beast suddenly spread out. The majestic dark force blasted directly at Bai Mei. It was that simple and crude. Bang! There was a loud noise. When the dark force fell, Bai Mei blew the flute as she raised her eyes to take a look at Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei had no intention of moving. There was almost no suspense in this attack. Her entire body exploded. But, in the blink of an eye, the blue dragon that was entrenched in the sky suddenly let out a low dragon roar. The massive dragon body seemed to have lost control as it surged forward and charged at Lin Fan. The dragon swayed its body. The dragon's tail flew. The blue dragon's scales shone with an indestructible light. All of it had taken on all of Yiqing Luo's profound energy earlier. Jean, Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted abruptly as she swiftly kept her glower flame fan. Roar, the blue dragon raised his head and his voice sounded a little suppressed. The dragon's body began to twist uncontrollably again. It was as if he was fighting against something. Yiqing Luo's expression instantly turned gloomy. He glared fiercely at Bai Mei. Generally speaking, humans wanted to contract with the beast race. Not only could they use their own blood to form a contract. Blood was only used to build a bridge of communication between the two. Just like earlier, Bai Mei dripped her blood on the blue dragon. Chapter 42-22. But not only did Bai Mei drip a drop of blood on the blue dragon. Following that, she dripped some of her own blood into the blue dragon's mouth. Borrowing the power of the dark Yin flute, Even the dragon clan would be affected by this. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned slightly cold as a chilly intent flashed past. From the looks of it, she could only start from Bai Mei. Restrain Bai Mei and snatch the dark Yin flute. Then Bai Mei would lose her backing. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she sized Bai Mei up with a piercingly cold glare. Now, Bai Mei was riddled with injuries and had lost too much blood. It wasn't difficult to subdue such a broken body. But Bai Mei could make use of the dark Yin flute to let the blue dragon block in front of her. If she were to strike too heavily, perhaps it would be the same as what happened earlier. The one who was injured might be the blue dragon. This was a little difficult. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly as she pondered on what she should do. Suddenly, that huge dragon which was blocking in front of Bai Mei let out a sharp roar. Following that, with an irresistible force, it charged towards Yiqing Luo's face. The oncoming hurricane whizzed past his ears. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. Towards the blue dragon's sudden action, she wasn't able to react in time. In her heart, she didn't feel that he would hurt her. The blue dragon's huge head stopped in front of Yiqing Luo. Just one of his dragon heads was already the size of her. The azure blue dragon's eyes met hers without blinking. Between the ripples, that pair of dragon's eyes seemed to be transmitting some kind of message to her. But there was no time to think about it. The blue dragon's entrenched body suddenly started spiraling rapidly. Yiqing Luo felt a warmth between her brows. Following that, there was something trying to drill into her brows. A gush of warmth spread from her brows into her body, enveloping her entire body. Inside his chest, the blood that would occasionally boil and the profound energy that attempted to rush out, under this warmth, gradually subsided. Some kind of energy slowly seeped into her limbs. Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes fanned. Her eyes stared blankly at the blue dragon, whose head was aligned with her forehead. The blue dragon's body floated in front of her. She seemed to have understood something. His expression changed slightly. "Ah, Jean, you can't be," the words were left unsaid. His profound heart jade instantly felt a scorching hot sensation. It also carried a majestic power that shook her body. There was a buzzing sound in his mind. Her vision suddenly blurred. A short period of dizziness caused her delicate body to sway slightly, causing her to lose her balance. Swish, another piercing sound rang out. Ripples of red and blue intertwined profound waves spread out in the surrounding air. A warm current washed through every corner of his body. Yiqing Luo could vaguely feel that something was stirring. It was as if he had caught something. But it was also a little blurry. She didn't know. What did he look like in front of everyone right now? The girl stood there steadily. His blazing red robe billowed in the strong wind, like an excited flame. 3,000 black hairs danced wildly in the wind. Like silk, it poured down in torrents. But, in front of her, that huge dragon's body was at the same level as her head. The blue profound light intertwined with the red glow released by the young girl. It looked elegant and holy. Ordinary people could not blaspheme it. No. Damn it. You can't contract it. It's mine, it's mine. Chapter 42-23. Roar, the majestic dragon's roar pierced through the heavens and earth. The dark clouds in the sky were pushed aside bit by bit. The land regained its brightness. The dragon scales on the blue dragon's body glowed brilliantly as it flowed continuously. Yiqing Luo felt a soft touch as it brushed past her hand. Immediately after, there was an invisible force that linked her and the blue dragon together. Her chest seemed to be surging with a tidal wave of energy. The warm current spread and the majestic energy scoured every single meridian in her body. Her limbs and bones were flowing endlessly. The scorching profound jade heart was flickering with a flickering red glow. Ah, Jean. Yiqing Luo's pink lips moved slightly as she softly spat out 2 words. Her body trembled again. Boundless energy waves surged into her body in a frenzy. Boom, there was a sudden jolt in his brain. Invisible profound waves spread out from Yiqing Luo's body. Her eyes suddenly opened wide. The alluring red glow was like a sharp blade as it shot out. Her hands clenched into fists as the profound waves were released one after another. Virtuous profound 5th grade. She had advanced. Thick and majestic profound energy vibrated in the surroundings. Bai Mei looked at this scene as she looked at the young lady's profound grade energy. The waves of profound waves spread out, stirring up a hurricane. Her entire face was distorted. Yi Qing Luo. When she saw the blue dragon, she had wholeheartedly thought that the appearance of the blue dragon was the turning point in her life. This blue dragon already belonged to her. But that blue dragon actually took the initiative to choose Yiqing Luo, initiating the contract with her. That damned slut. It's her. It's her. Snatched away the blue dragon which belonged to her, Bai Mei. Hatred surged in her heart. However, there was nowhere for him to vent his anger. Bai Mei's entire body was trembling. She glanced at those young men and women who were standing unsteadily not too far away. The cold glint in her eyes flashed past. Her hands unconsciously curled up a little. Earlier when Yiqing Luo stopped her from using the Dark Een flute to control the blue dragon, she didn't even have the energy to lift up the Dark Een flute and play it. Otherwise, as long as he had the flute of Dark Een, she could totally make use of the world group's people, to threaten Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei's fingers struggled to move. However, he felt a stabbing pain all over his body and an intense pain of his internal organs being torn apart. She was so stunned that she couldn't muster up any strength. The girl stood on top of the blue dragon. After her advancement, her aura had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. That otherworldly face of hers was even more stunning. She was so high up, looking down at everything below. Bai Mei felt that in Yiqing Luo's eyes, she was like an ant which could be easily pinched to death. This knowledge caused the hatred in Bai Mei's heart to deepen. The tense atmosphere made Hall Chief Wu Yan and the third elder's hearts beat faster. They looked at each other. She also realized that Bai Mei wasn't Yiqing Luo's match. Even if Yiqing Luo was seriously injured previously and had no strength to move. But he had contracted a blue dragon. Not only that, but it had also advanced a grade. What could Bai Mei use to compete with Yiqing Luo? Thinking of this, the two of them immediately thought of a way out. Come here, come here. Suddenly, Bai Mei's weak voice was heard from the side. Hall Chief Wu Yan looked at the person who was lying on the ground, unable to climb up as his brows creased. Chapter 42-24. That roar. It shook her until her throat was dry as she started coughing violently. That pale face was flushed with an abnormal shade of red because of the coughing. She looked extremely disheveled. Hall Head Wu Yan sneered, Bai Mei, you're a defeated opponent of Yiqing Luo. What are you trying to do? Now you're the one begging us. This provocation made Bai Mei's face turn steely green. Her breathing became hurried. Her venomous eyes stared fiercely at Hall Head Wu Yan as her mouth opened and closed as she gritted her teeth. Do you think that if I die, you'll be able to escape? Hall Head Wu Yan's expression turned stiff. Back at Ling Long Palace, she and Yiqing Luo had already formed an enmity. Now, she followed Secluded Palace to scheme against Yiqing Luo. How could Yiqing Luo possibly let her off? She couldn't die. She had to return alive to save Fu. Third Elder's face turned slightly pale. She had already cooperated with Secluded Palace. Ling Long Palace was already under Dmo Xian's control, so there was no way for her to return. Now, she could only rely on Secluded Palace to get what she wanted. And the only medium to contact Secluded Palace was Bai Mei. They had no other way out. The two of them exchanged glances and finally walked towards Bai Mei. Their expressions were extremely ugly, and when they walked to Bai Mei's side, they saw her covered in blood and in a disheveled state as they couldn't conceal the disgust in their eyes. Bai Mei was so angry that she was trembling as her expression turned extremely ugly. But she could only suppress the anger in her chest as she clenched the dark-green flute in her hands. Do you want to leave this place alive? Their eyes shone as they squatted down. You have a way to let us leave this place? Blue Dragon's appearance. And Yiqing Luo's advancement. It had already reversed the advantage which they originally had. Previously, Yiqing Luo had to listen to their control. Those kids in the world group were also under their control, unable to move. But now, it was going to be difficult for them to leave this place alive. Bai Mei struggled to raise the dark-green flute as the sharp cold glint faintly appeared. Use profound energy. Throw this flute into the sky. The people from secluded palace will bring us away. When she raised the dark-green flute, Hall Master Wu Yan and Third Elder's eyes flashed with obvious greed. Their eyes were glued to the flute of darkness. They could clearly see the power of this flute. Not only could he control those little kids with the sound of the flute, it could even be used as a weapon to hurt Yiqing Luo. Even the palace master of Gloomy Palace was afraid of this flute. The two of them looked at the flute greedily, their lips curling up uncontrollably. Just throw the flute out? While asking, the two of them reached for the flute with their hands. Such obvious greed. Bai Mei naturally saw it. But she pretended not to see it. He raised the dark-green flute and placed it in front of the two of them. That's right. Throw it into the sky with profound energy. The people from the Palace of Darkness will rush over to save us. Hall Chief Wu Yan could not help but smile as he glanced at Third Elder from the corner of his eyes. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and snatched the flute of dark-green. The Third Elder's face darkened. Hall Leader Wu Yan. This flute is mine, she said, reaching out to snatch it. Chapter 42-25. As she spoke, she bit her finger and smeared her blood on the flute of dark-green. Bitch! The Third Elder cursed angrily. But, just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Hall Leader Wu Yan suddenly let out a scream. Hall Leader Wu Yan, who had been grinning maliciously, twitched as he tried to throw the dark-green flute in his hand. But no matter how much she swung her hand, the flute seemed to be glued to her hand. The Third Elder's expression turned ugly as he quickly looked at Bai Mei, who was lying on the ground. Bai Mei did not show much surprise on her face. Looking at Hall Chief Wu Yan's lips curling into a cold smile, her heart skipped a beat. This was obviously, Bai Mei had done it on purpose. Bai Mei knew how greedy they were. He had purposely used the flute of dark-green. What was Bai Mei trying to do? Ah! Ah! Save me, save me! Hall Master Wu Yan screamed miserably as he tried to withdraw his hand from the dark-green flute. Cornered and despairing, she actually turned her head. He looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction for help. Her face was filled with a twisted expression of pain. As though he had exhausted all the energy in his body, he walked towards Yiqing Luo. She kept asking for help. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms and stood on the eaves. A huge blue dragon coiled behind her. She had seen the interactions between Hall Chief Wu Yan, the Third Elder, and Bai Mei. He didn't stop her. He wanted to see what other tricks Bai Mei had up her sleeves. Gu Jingyu took advantage of the chaos to leave. Only the three of them were left here. She wanted to see if Bai Mei could still use that dark-green flute to stir up any waves. As for Bai Mei, Hall Chief Wu Yan, and the Third Elder, she never intended to let it go. Anyone who touches the reverse scale of a dragon will die. The brothers of the world group were her reverse scale. The three of them actually used the world group to threaten her. Touching the world group, she would not let a single one of them off. The young girl's bewitching eyes flickered with a bewitching red light, and a cold chill emerged. Her pink lips curled up into a mocking smile. That smile. Hall Master Wu Yan, who was crying for help, stopped in his tracks. His deathly pale face was filled with despair before death. She became even more anxious as she swung the flute of dark-green with all her might. But at this moment, Hall Chief Wu Yan's hand began to wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, it was her body, for limbs, waist, lower body, as Hall leader Wu Yan gradually dried up. The withered body seemed to have lost all support. With a thud, he fell to the ground. His head hit the ground heavily. Then, it withered as well. The scream stopped abruptly. Hall Chief Wu Yan was right in front of everyone's eyes. Bit by bit, he had turned into a dried corpse. Clatter, the flute of Dark-Een fell to the ground. A dark and sinister aura lingered around the Dark-Een flute. It was as if he was resting contentedly after eating and drinking his fill. The third elder looked at the flute again. At this moment, there was no longer any greed in his heart. Her hair stood on end, and a chill ran down her spine. Her entire body tensed up. If she had been the one to snatch the flute of Dark-Een just now, the person who had turned into a dried corpse now would be her. Bai Mei, that slut, was simply too vicious. What are you still standing there for? Pick up the flute. Bai Mei's voice came from behind. The third elder's body froze as he stared at the unmoving flute of Dark-Een on the ground, his entire body shivering. Chapter 42-26. As long as you don't have any crooked thoughts and attempt to form a blood pact with the Dark-Een flute, nothing will happen. Bai Mei's lips curled sinisterly. Third elder's body tensed up as he broke out in cold sweat. Bai Mei knew right from the start that the Dark-Een flute would suck human blood. She intentionally took out the Dark-Een flute in order to lure their greedy hearts, using them as nourishment for the Dark-Een flute. After seeing Bai Mei's true colors, Third Elder didn't dare to believe Bai Mei's words so easily. Third Elder, you're the only person I can rely on now. How could I possibly let anything happen to you? Bai Mei could tell the fear in Third Elder's heart as she laughed softly. Only I can control the Dark-Een flute, give it to me. Then we will have a chance to leave. Third Elder's body tensed up. His face was filled with a struggling expression. She had no choice. There was no way out. Not trusting Bai Mei, standing here, facing Yiqing Luo, who had formed a contract with the Blue Dragon, she had no way to escape. Trusting Bai Mei, at least there was a chance of survival. After all, Bai Mei was already injured to the extent that she couldn't move. If Bai Mei could borrow the Dark-Een flute to bring her out of here, she still had a chance to make a comeback. Third Elder clenched his fists tightly as he suppressed the surging thoughts in his heart as he walked towards the Dark-Een flute. Passing Hall Head Wu Yan's dried corpse, Third Elder bent down and his fingers trembled as he picked up the Dark-Een flute. Suddenly, a hurricane struck. Third Elder's fingers had not even touched the Dark-Een flute. That hurricane had already swept the Dark-Een flute away. Furthermore, that Hall Head Wu Yan's dried corpse was also brought towards a direction. Just like that, the Third Elder grabbed the dried skin with his hand. Third Elder was so shocked that he immediately let go as he retreated 2 steps backwards. That feeling in his hand had yet to dissipate. Third Elder's face was pale as he used all his might to wipe his hand on his body. As he wiped, his face was steely green with a tinge of fear as he stared fiercely at the direction where the Dark-Een flute had been swept away. The young lady stood on the roof with a smile as she waved the raging flame fan in her hands gently, meeting with Third Elder's vengeful gaze. Her smile became even more beautiful, like a flower. I've already given you a chance. Unfortunately, you didn't take it. Third Elder's face turned even paler. He was very clear that the opportunity, which Yiqing Luo mentioned, was referring to earlier when he didn't stop her and Hall Master Wu Yan from snatching the Dark-Een flute. If Yiqing Luo had stopped him earlier, there was a possibility that Hall leader Wu Yan would not have died to the Dark-Een flute. Yiqing Luo moved her finger. The hurricane brought the glower flame fan directly in front of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei was so anxious that she sat up straight. The pain all over her body made her face pale. She broke out in a cold sweat and was so angry that her whole body was trembling. There seemed to be a fishy taste in his throat. She was angry, frustrated, and anxious. He spat out a large mouthful of blood. The flute of Dark Een was her last hope. He seemed to have seen the killing intent in Bai Mei's eyes. Yiqing Luo's smile became even sweeter. Bai Mei, it's precisely because this is your last hope, so how could I possibly give you a chance to save your life? She tilted her head as her brows were filled with a smile, but it was mixed with a different emotion. I will not let you off. Her words had just ended. A strong, profound energy poured down in torrents. The surrounding air started to congeal into pieces of ice frost. The raging hurricane crazily stirred up everything in the surroundings. Bai Mei didn't even have the energy to move as she was instantly entangled in that hurricane. Chapter 42-27. But unfortunately, the lady who was entangled in the hurricane. There wasn't a single wound on her body. Not even a single drop of blood splattered out. Third Elder's pupils constricted abruptly. This hurricane, it wasn't Bai Mei's body that was hurt. It was her soul. Yiqing Luo wanted to torture Bai Mei's soul, to make Bai Mei suffer a fate worse than death. This method was even more painful than killing Bai Mei directly. Third Elder's face turned pale as beads of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. No, absolutely could not go on like this, if Bai Mei was tortured to death. The next one would be her turn. She didn't want to die, didn't want to be tortured to death by Yiqing Luo. Third Elder was filled with fear. His gaze kept darting around. Suddenly, his gaze was fixed on a certain spot. Her heart suddenly started beating faster. Her pupils constricted as her breathing hastened. In her heart, two voices kept on fighting. Must find a way to protect herself. She couldn't let Bai Mei die. If Bai Mei was alive, then she could live. Third Elder's eyes shot out a strong desire to live. His gaze carefully looked towards the direction of Yiqing Luo and the others. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone's attention was on Bai Mei. Third Elder restrained his presence as he quietly neared a certain spot. Her movements were extremely light and slow. It was completely silent. But she had neglected. Beside the young lady was a blue dragon which almost enveloped the heaven and earth. Third Elder was just nearing the eaves. A strong, profound wave came crashing towards her. The blue dragon's tail fell in front of Third Elder with a bam. Third Elder's reaction was swift as he leaped and avoided the blue dragon's tail. But when the tail landed on the ground, it created a huge pit, sand and gravel flew and the aftershock shook. It also forced her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Blue dragon's attack made everyone's gazes gathered over. But before he could even notice the Third Elder, who had been sent flying to the side of the cliff, the Third Elder, who had been thrown to the side. Everyone was shocked by the sudden collapse of the eaves as they cried out in shock. The side of the cliff, the dilapidated temple, could not withstand the blue dragon's dragon might. The dragon's tail swung down. The aftershock. It made the shaky and broken temple collapse with a loud bang. Yiqing Luo, who was standing on the eaves, felt her feet lighten. The moment the ruined temple collapsed, the tip of his foot tapped lightly on the precipice beside it. Blue Dragon moved his body and caught the girl firmly. It was this gap. The Third Elder, who was sent flying, did not care about the pain from the fall. He clenched his teeth and fiercely pounced towards the ruins of the ruined temple. In front of death. All the pain was not worth mentioning. Guyuang, who wanted to live, had already led Third Elder's brain to make the most direct move. Oh no. Qing Luo, that old woman wants to snatch that flute. Yan Xiaoyi was shocked by Third Elder's actions as she immediately shifted her attention away from Yiqing Luo. When he saw the Third Elder dive into the ruins with the black flute in his hand, his expression changed. Quick, stop her. Seeing this, Lu Xiaoyu immediately ran towards Third Elder. The rest of the world group's youngsters also jogged over. That flute had just sucked a living person into a dried corpse. It was also that flute which caused them to be in so much pain that they wished they were dead, suffering unspeakably. They still didn't know what tricks the secluded palace had done to their bodies. But they were very clear. As long as they destroyed that flute. Chapter 42-28. That flute must not return to Bai Mei's hands. When Third Elder grabbed the Darkeen flute, she felt an icy coldness in her palm. As though she was grabbing a piece of thousand-year-old ice with her bare hands. The sinister chi which lingered above the flute seemed to have penetrated her skin and into her body. This unbearable feeling made Third Elder want to throw the flute in her hand out. But on seeing the 10 over youngsters chasing after her, and Bai Mei who was screaming miserably, Third Elder suppressed the fear which seeped out from her bones as she grabbed the Darkeen flute and sprinted towards Bai Mei's direction. Old woman. Put the flute down. Yan Shao Yi had already chased up as she gathered a burst of profound energy in her palm and struck it down towards Third Elder. The other youngsters also rushed over in a group. They had just arrived at the Earth Realm and had yet to see Yiqing Luo when they were kidnapped by this group of people. The humiliation and torment were all vented out at this moment. Third Elder clenched her teeth tightly as the pain from her internal organs made her feel dizzy. At this moment, she was surrounded by 10 over youngsters. She wanted to escape. But there was nothing she could do. She could only place her hopes on Bai Mei. She shouted at the lady who was lying on the ground as though she was dead, "Bai Mei, catch!" Saying that, she threw the Darkeen flute in her hands towards Bai Mei. The lady who was lying on the ground didn't move at all. Third Elder's eyes turned red from anxiety. "Bai Mei, this is our last chance. If you don't want to die, get up quickly." Dong! The sound of the Darkeen flute falling onto the ground was heard. Bai Mei's eyelashes fluttered. "Take that flute away." Yan Shao Yi snatched the air, and on seeing the flute being thrown away by Third Elder, she immediately reminded the youngster who was nearer to her. The youngster's reaction was very fast. When the Darkeen flute fell onto the ground, he had already pounced towards the flute. "If you don't want to die, get up quickly." These few words, if played back, kept echoing in Bai Mei's mind. Bai Mei was in so much pain that she couldn't move at all. However, her consciousness was constantly reminding her of this. When she heard Yan Shao Yi's sharp shout, she could vaguely hear footsteps rushing towards her direction. Bai Mei didn't know where she got the strength from. He quickly got up from the ground. He pounced in the direction of the sound in a sorry state. She stretched out her arm, and the black flute was only a finger's distance away from her. "Just a little more, and I'll be able to touch it." Bai Mei took a deep breath and moved forward bit by bit. Suddenly, a pair of feet appeared in front of her. He stood beside the flute of Darkeen. Bai Mei's breathing froze. Her face was pale as she narrowed her eyes and raised her head. In a daze, he saw a young figure. That young face was filled with resentment. When he saw Bai Mei raise her head, he purposely grinned evilly. Then, under Bai Mei's gaze, he picked up the flute of Darkeen with a smile. But before his hand could touch the flute of Darkeen, he heard Yiqing Luo's hurried shout, "Don't touch the flute." The youth's movements froze. It was at this moment that he froze. Bai Mei lunged forward. Both her hands grabbed the flute of Darkeen tightly. And this lunge made Bai Mei's energy depleted as blood gushed out in big mouthfuls. But she couldn't be bothered to adjust her body. Both her hands trembled as she held the flute of Darkeen tightly. Her mouth, which was overflowing with blood, uncontrollably opened. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.